Hello everyone, it's Drew back again with another video on the 1968 911S project car. This is a car that I've had for a few years and that we are repairing rust on, and it's been quite a journey so far. For those of you that don't know, this is a car that sat outside for a very long time, just about as long as I've been alive, maybe even longer. And it is a car that I traded my 2013 Ford Raptor for and a little bit of cash. And we are working here to get it back on the road. And that starts with the rust repair, which we're going to get into today. And we're actually going to put the first metal back onto the car. So it's a huge milestone for us. A lot of the videos have just been cutting out material. This is the first time we're putting material back into the car. So it's a big win. So what we'll get into today is we're going to add a flange to the intersection of the longitudinal that had been cut off previously by the floor replacement in the 912. We will go ahead and transport that middle layer of the longitudinal back into the car, and then we will finish off with putting the inner piece back into the car. So let's just get into this video. It's going to be a lot going on, and again, big wins. Let's get into it. So since filming that last video, I went ahead and took apart the piece that we cut out of the 912 and separated it into the inner layer and the middle layer. I talked a little bit in the last video about the fact that this flange has been cut off when the previous floor was replaced in the 912. So one thing I want to do with these pieces before they go back in the car is recreate the flange that I talked about in the last video. So that's going to involve taking a piece of scrap that I have, cutting a piece that's kind of a similar shape, and then welding it on to recreate it. So that's what it looks like at this point. I cut it down, created that flange. It's about a 1/2 inch wide all the way through. And this will give us area to punch holes in and fill back in with plug welds when we do the floor. So now that we have these two pieces separated from one another and we actually put the flange on the inner, I want to start going ahead and trying to test fit the middle layer into the car. Let's go ahead and do that now. So you guys can see here, this is the middle layer, and now that it's separated from the floor and the inner layer, we can see that it goes from a horizontal flange into a vertical flange. And that's going to be, this section here is going to be where the floor was, and this is going to go into the vertical flange that's located with the 3 layers down here. So we have that transition section. I think that's a good piece to keep and still have intact at this point. So I'm showing you guys with my hand that I have the laser out, and the purpose of that is I'm trying to set the vertical location of where the flanges are going to be that go to the floor. And I basically set it up so that's just below where the current inner layer's flange is, and the middle layer should basically align with that and be in the same plane. So when the floor comes in, they're all at the same level and they can be spot welded in. So I'm going to use that as kind of a reference for the vertical height. And we know that when the piece that we took out came out of the car, this is where the middle layer terminates from the factory, and that was just in line with where we cut here. So that's going to kind of be our forward reference, and then we're going to have our vertical reference with that laser. So I'm going to go ahead and try and set it in, maybe clamp it in, try and figure out where we're at and how much we need to cut off. So I'm just kind of resting just the edge right onto the floor pan, try and line up the height and also the height for the seam back here where my left hand is. I think I'm just going to come in and make a rough cut and then try and fit it again and kind of just work it that way. That's easily the ugliest weld I've ever made. It's a pretty challenging angle and thin metal, so a lot of blowing through. I don't think I'm done yet. I'm going to go ahead and grind it back, make it look a little bit more visually appealing, and then I will go back and weld any more if I need to. All right. So that's where it's at this point. I did spray some weld through primer on the back of the piece we just welded in, as well as onto the heat tube, just to cover some of the spots where I touched it with the grinder. So hopefully we have some coverage there for rust in the future. I know we're gonna probably come open this area again from this other side, from the outside of the car, so we'll have access again. We can spray some more rust preventative treatment in there if we need to. All right, guys, it's the next day, and we are out here working on putting the inner panel back into the longitudinal here. So to update you guys on where we're at, I just filled in the spot welds on this middle layer just so we have a full clean piece of metal. And now I'm trying to locate in the inner panel. So like I said, we're working on trying to get the inner panel cut to size so that it fits in perfectly and we can just weld it in. One thing I'm dealing with is just a little bit of an alignment discrepancy between the two different cars that I'm cutting pieces out of. You can see that when I align kind of where this turn in the metal is, the flange is a little bit lower on the piece out of the 912. And it's hard for me to tell if that's just because this floor being rusty and being damaged from the underside, maybe it's depressed a little bit higher, and I should just account for pushing it back down to align with where this piece is, or if it's just kind of an alignment problem where it seems like it's different heights, but really it's more of just an angulation issue. So I'm going to keep working on that, and hopefully we can get this located correctly and back into the car. So it does appear that this flange doesn't come perfectly out vertically. It kind of comes back up at more of a tighter angle than 90 degrees, more acute. And so I'm going to try and cut just maybe an inch of the floor away right here in an effort to kind of bend the flange back down to 90. And hopefully that helps with the alignment with this new piece going in. Hopefully you guys can see that I exposed about an inch there, maybe more like an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. Anyway, I'm going to just try and take the hammer to this a little bit, bring this down. I don't really care that the rest of it might be doing the same thing, but I really just want to maybe bring it down back to 90 degrees in an effort to create better alignment with the inner piece. Completely moves. Oh, damn it. Fuck me. So I'm actually quite liking how this is fitting in at this point. The only thing that isn't satisfactory is the height of this flange. So I'm not too worried about it. It's something I can correct in the future if I want to cut this flange off and adjust the height up to match this side. Or maybe when we go to do the floors, there'll be some margin there for allowing the height. I don't know yet, but that other than that, everything's fitting nice and smooth all the way up. And I like the position of some of the features, like this hole, and I like how it fits over flush over these areas here. So when we fill it in, we sand it out, it will be hopefully nice and flush. I'm hoping that the thickness of this sheet is a little bit thicker. I can tell you that it is. I'm not hoping, but I'm hoping that that makes the welding of this piece a little bit easier than the middle piece. So I guess from here, I'm going to go ahead and start finishing out the welds, and I'll check in with you guys after that. Here's a quick shot of where we are as we're welding it back in. We're going to keep moving forward. I'm going to wire wheel it to clean up some of the contamination. That way it doesn't affect other spots, and then we'll keep welding. So there it is, all welded out. We might have to fill in a few spots when we grind it back, but looking okay. I'm happy with it. Less frustrating than yesterday. So let's get it cleaned up and see where we're at. And so that's what it looks like now that I've cleaned it up a little bit along the seams where we welded it in. Pretty happy with the results, and definitely went a little bit easier than yesterday. I think the thickness really helped us. So we're gonna have to end the video there. I think this was a really big milestone. We're actually putting new metal back into the car. In a sense, we're kind of getting over the hump, but we still have a lot of work ahead of us. We still got to go through the passenger side and even see what the damage is fully in terms of the layers we just transplanted back into the driver's side. So it is a good feeling, the welding process. I've practiced it, and it's definitely more challenging than I expected, but we will continue to get better at it. So in the next video, what I think we're going to try and do is get into the passenger side longitudinal, do some of the same assessment. We're going to run through it a little bit faster. I don't want to bore you guys with the same thing, repetitive videos in a sense, but we will try to get closer to maybe actually trying to locate the new torsion tube into the car and just see physically where it's going to be in space. I think that would be a really big milestone as well. And what we have to do to get there is cut open this side and disconnect the torsion tube from it. So hopefully we can make it there. And I guess I'll catch you guys in the next video.